All right, welcome everybody. I am so excited to bring on my next guest, Miss Ashley Lindley with Juniper Title. She is going to join us today to tell us some more about the title industry and how that relates to real estate. I think so many people, especially buyers and sellers, don't really understand what title is. They just kind of get thrown into it once they go into a transaction. So I wanted to bring Ashley here today so she can give us some more information about who she is, what she does, and that way when you meet her, when you do a transaction, you know exactly who you're working with. So welcome, Ashley. It's so good to have you.
Thank you for having me.
So you work with Juniper Title right now.
Yes.
And who's your business partner?
So my business partner is Brittany Bell. We're actually known as the Title Sisters in the DFW area.
Yes.
So
it's so fun. And how did you get into the title realm?
So believe it or not, I've actually never heard of title.
I love it.
Until 2 years ago. So I've been in the industry for 2 years, thanks to Brittany. She's actually been in the industry for over 10, but I
didn't know that.
Yes. So she's been in it for a while, but I actually was doing nutrition. I was a personal trainer for like a hot minute, but I ran a smoothie store for a while. Wasn't really sure what I wanted to do, but it was something real estate related. I actually wanted to be a realtor.
Yep.
And my sister flipped me around and was like, actually, I need a processor. So you can come in, join me. I'll teach you, what we do here. So I started off as a receptionist, learned the ways of escrow, and then I recently got licensed when we moved over to Juniper recently. So
yay! So what's the difference between a processor and what you're doing now?
So an escrow processor, we really just we process the files, but we collect information we need, surveys, information sheets, and then escrow officers, we actually close and fund the files.
Okay, so you need both, but one could probably the officer could probably do all of it, but they can do more business when they have both.
Correct, yeah. So, and with a processor, you're not licensed, but as an escrow officer, you do have to be licensed.
Gotcha. Okay, so that's almost like for me, a real estate agent versus having an admin, essentially. Most of the time, our admins are not licensed, and then once they do, they become the real estate agent and partner.
Yes.
So very similar. Okay, that's what I wanted to know. So tell me, what does it look like when title gets involved? Like, what part does that happen?
So we're kind of the last step when it comes to collecting documents and really getting the process going. When, say, for example, with a residential contract or commercial contract, so the listing agent most of the time already has their title company that they'd like to work with. So we're, in the background until the contract gets executed. Once that happens, everything comes over to our title company, and that's where we get the process started with our underwriters and doing the chain of title and collecting information we need for closing. Refinances, lenders have their preferred title partners as well. So we're there. We're just, you see us more in the last step just to really get the process going so we can get you guys to the signing table.
I love it. So let's backtrack a little bit, because the first question I always have is, who gets to pick the title company?
So that's a good question. Believe it or not, anybody can actually pick their title company. Family can, if they have somebody that they know that they like to work with, they can let their realtor or their lender know, hey, I have a title company I like to work with. Can we use them, please? But most of the time, a lot of people think listing agents are the ones who choose title when it comes to their contracts, but the buyer's agent also can choose.
Yes.
So
it's a negotiation.
It is a negotiation, yes.
What about new construction?
New construction. So builders a lot of the times have their own title company
almost in-house. Yep.
A lot of them, like D.R. Horton, for example, they have their own actual title company and lender too. So a lot of the times you can do outside title, just different fees. The buyer would end up being responsible for the title policies. Right.
And that can be a good chunk of money. So usually most people end up going with the in-house because the incentive there just makes more sense, especially for a first-time home buyer that's looking to bring less to the closing table. So then, okay, so let's roll in. So we've got, actually, no, before we even roll into contracts, something that I love to do when working with you, especially with my sellers, is we like to try to open title a little bit early if we can, especially if it's in an HOA, to get that process rolling. Because once you receive HOA documents, the buyer then has 3 days right now to review those documents, and they could actually get out of the contract and get their earnest money back. So for me, it can take a couple weeks to get HOA docs. So if you wait till you're under contract to get the HOA docs, that's 2 weeks later that they could have an out. So we like to try to get those documents ahead of time so we can provide them within the first week and get it within that option period. So we're taking out 2 contingencies at once. So that's one of my favorite things to do is start title a little early for the sellers. They do have an upfront cost. Like they'll usually have to pay to get those HOA documents, but most sellers are going to have to pay no matter what. So get it out of the way, knock it out. One less way the buyer gets out of the contract.
Yeah.
Because there's 32 plus ways for the buyer to get out of a contract. So as many as we can mitigate as possible. So there's the sellers starting to open title ahead of time. What are you looking when you said chain of title? What is that process?
So when the process gets going, we put in your orders. We send them off to our underwriter. So Juniper Title is actually underwritten by the Fidelity family. So we have quite a few different underwriters that we are able to use for transactions, which is great news for the client. If any liens come back weird, but we can get into that, later. But really, so we'll send them off to our underwriter. They will do what we call the chain of title, where they pull previous deeds, any liens that may be on title, and then they send all of that title work back to us. We provide that to the client for them to review and start what we call clearing title or clearing clouds.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because title has to be clear in order to transfer the deed, correct?
Yes.
So what are some examples of liens that may pop up that are kind of common to see?
Common liens are, one, your previous mortgage, obviously, and that's just the payoff, and we'll have that at close.
So many people freak out when they see that.
They do, yes. So sometimes lately I've seen liens from prior mortgages when somebody may have refinanced a couple years ago. There was one before that.
Yep.
Really, that's just a release of lien that will, one, we need to verify that it was paid off then. Yep. Two, we'll need a release of lien. That way it goes away and the new owner or current borrower doesn't have to worry about that again. Yep. We've also seen child support liens, federal tax liens. All of those have to be, a payoff received, and we'll have to get those released because at that point in time, they are due and payable up to where we're at in the process.
Yes.
So those have to be taken care of as well.
Right. And so that's like your federal tax, like that's your income tax. That's outside of just your real estate transaction. So if you owe the government money, they're usually going to put a lien on your house. Yes. And that can be your property taxes too, HOA dues.
HOA dues, we have seen HOA assessment liens, and the other one I've seen.
The work vendor liens. Like if someone did prior work, what are they called? That's called... what is that called?
I just drew a blank.
Yes. So like if you have someone who's replaced windows and you didn't pay it, they can
liens.
Yeah, they can put a lien on your house to get paid for their work. So make sure you pay all your people that you're supposed to pay.
Yes.
So you clear those. Sometimes things pop up, like maybe let's say that a seller was married when they bought the house. They have divorced since.
Yes, so we ask for the final divorce decree for review. That gets into our underwriter, and we just make sure all the correct parties. Basically, we make sure the property was deeded to who it was supposed to in the divorce, whoever it was awarded to,
right?
And that there were no outstanding costs. All the money transferred over to the correct person as well,
right?
So those are things that we look for that we have to have cleared before we can close.
So when you start a transaction and you get over to title, usually you send a nice questionnaire that usually comes up about all these instances, so you know ahead of time. So it's so important to fill that out to your best of ability. There's no sense in hiding anything because they're going to find it. They will find it. They're like private investigators.
Yes, we're on you about it. Yes, and it takes care of just our basic things that we'll look for when we clear. So vesting, or make sure you're married if you acquired the property. If you were divorced, we're going to ask for the divorce decree, payoffs.
If someone passes away, that's another. Then you got to worry about probate and there's so many instances.
A will, heirship affidavits, and that is when we look for those things, or we refer you to a probate attorney to get those taken care of. So we have many avenues that we can take, but most importantly is we have to clear title. That way, whoever buys the home can just walk into it and start. When I say making memories in your new home without having to worry about what was previously on.
Well, that's how you get the actual title policy coverage.
Yes,
and that's what you're paying for is a title policy coverage, and that means what exactly once they've gotten the coverage. That means that anything in the past that might have been missed will be taken care of because you've paid for the insurance. Is that how the title policy works?
Yeah, so it's on the policy and it shows that we have paid it off. And depending if you're doing cash, you'll have the owner's title policy. If you're doing a purchase financed, it's a lender's title policy and an owner's title policy. So those we require, the lender's title policy. Obviously, if you're working through a lender, we always highly recommend recommend an owner's title policy for cash.
Yes.
Just to take care of things like that. That way, there's no claims or anything like that. It just, it can get messy. So we want to take care of the client.
Yes. Yes, always. So let's talk about cash versus lenders. Most people think, okay, I'm paying cash. I'm going to give you money. I'm going to sign the dotted line. I'm going to close in 3 days and I'm done.
Yeah.
There's a lot more that goes into it than just that, because you have to be involved. So talk about what that kind of process looks like different from the traditional buyer right now.
So cash deals can be quicker. It obviously just depends what comes back on title. With cash deals, no, we cannot just accept cash. Everything has to be certified funds, checks and balances. And
what's a certified fund?
Certified funds are cashier's checks, wires, personal checks, anything that we can cash and watch go into the bank and out of the bank.
Perfect.
So no cash, unfortunately.
Don't come with money bags saying, I want to buy this property.
I know, yes. I have
do that with your bank.
Yes, do that with your bank. So with cash deals, so we open title the same way we would if it's a purchase or a refinance. They do the title work, it comes back, we send everything off. We still do the payoffs, the surveys, and we just go to the closing table, but without a lender being involved.
Right.
So money will just get transferred to us from wire or cashier's check. And we go to the closing table.
So there's still extra steps if you have cash. It's not as easy as you think. There's still
one step's just taken out.
yes, it is faster. It's less risk for the buyer or the seller, but you have to do more things. So let's talk. We're a traditional right now financed. We go under contract. We have in Texas, we have mandatory to provide our earnest money and our option money within 3 days.
Yes.
Option money for y'all is the money that goes to the seller, and that's to pretty much purchase your option period to do all your inspections.
Yes.
The earnest money, which in some states they may call it a deposit or things like that. So if you're relocating to Texas, what you may call a deposit, we call earnest money here in Texas. And that earnest money is paid directly to the title company. And from there, what happens with it?
So the earnest money, it stays with us. It gets deposited into the bank, and it's a copy in your file. That way, it's your hold. It's your what we call the good faith and good faith deposit.
Yes.
And that just is what helps us start the process, and it's your hold. So if you do decide to cancel your contract within the period, which you can touch more on because I can't really discuss the details of the contract, but that goes back to them if for whatever reason they chose.
So if you get one of those 32 buyer outs where your earnest money is protected, you can get it back. Now there are certain stipulations. There's only one period in the transaction, which is the option period, where you have what they call the unrestricted right to terminate. You don't have to provide a reason. You can cancel. Everything else after that, there is a potential out, but you've got to get parties to agree. Sometimes attorneys get involved. Proof has to be provided. So you never want to go into a contract thinking, oh, I can just get out of it later. Once you get past that option period, you're almost signing in blood at that point. There are ways, and we want to make sure everybody's interests are protected, but we got to get it out of titles earnest or escrow account to even get it back. And there's a lot that goes on past that point. But most of the times when we're in the option period, maybe inspections come back and there's just a huge overbearing amount of work that needs to be done. We can put in a termination and request a release of earnest money, and it just gets, half the time it gets FedEx back the next day and you move on to the next one.
Yeah, it just has to be deposited in the bank before we can release it back. So what goes in and goes out,
which can take a couple days.
It can take a couple days depending on the amount. So we always let everybody know if for whatever reason they do terminate the contract within that period. We just say, this hasn't hit the bank yet, but once it does, we'll refund this back.
Yeah, there's no just taking the check out and just giving it back. It does have to hit the funds. So I've had buyers say, well, can't they haven't even deposited, give me my money back. No, it has to hit the funds. Because technically you're not protected if you haven't deposited. You're actually in breach of contract if it doesn't hit deposit. Yes. So another thing as well that just reminded me of that I'm going to think about for a quick second is, I'm going to come back to that. So we do that part of the transaction. You start doing your work. We have things that are due in certain amounts of days. Right now it's 20 days for a title commitment to come back. Usually you'll get that back in like less than a week half the time. Yeah,
right now with the market being as hot as it is taking about 5 to 6 business days. I have seen it come back before, even though they tell me that it's going to take that long.
And do you personally do the title commitment, or who's doing that part?
So everything goes to our underwriter, and they give us the commitment, all the governing documents is what I like to call it.
Yes.
So all of that comes back to us. We review the commitment, make sure vesting's good, legal matches the survey, and we send it off to all the clients.
Yes, and survey is a great thing to touch on as well, because a lot of times sellers have their original survey from when they originally closed.
Yes.
Now, when you have an original survey, we can provide that to title along with what they call a T47 affidavit that you sign in front of a notary. You guys have notary services if someone needs help with that.
We do.
Yes, or you can go to a bank, or most places have it.
Yes.
And from there, that's where you go and compare it to make sure everything lines up.
Yes. So we just make sure nothing, on the survey. Well, one, we have to make sure that it's a legible survey.
Yes.
We have to see the seal.
I have seen a handwritten survey. I have just seen a handwritten survey, guys. They can pass if they have the right criteria. It's from like the original survey, and it would look like the surveyor's like notes before they turn it into the software. That was wild. Sorry, I didn't want to.
That's okay. That's.
But
wild.
there's different forms of surveys.
Yes. Oh, yeah. I've seen some massive land surveys too. But with surveys, that's the most important thing, because as a title company, we insure off the legal description.
Yes.
That is the most important thing. It has to match your lot and block, land, whatever it may be, acreage. So we send that off for review. They come back, update the commitment accordingly.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then we send that off. A lot of times people will order new surveys. There's many great surveying companies out there too.
Yes. Your lender can help with the surveys.
Yes.
Y'all can help with the surveys, connecting with the surveyor. The contract provides different options for the survey, where if, for instance, maybe we provide the survey and if a title doesn't approve it, then the buyer's going to pay for it or the seller will pay for it.
Mm-hmm.
There's different ways to negotiate that throughout. Surveys range in price as well.
Yep.
So sometimes when I sit down with my sellers, I say this is like a $300 to $500 piece of paper when you're working with a residential transaction. When you start getting into land, that's a whole other beast.
Yeah.
Especially depending on how much acres. So they got to fly a plane over to get your survey. You're going to pay for the gas. You're paying for the gas.
Yeah.
So those range. What's the highest survey amount have you seen?
It was a lot of land, but it was around 1,000.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
I've heard stories of even a couple thousand.
Yeah, it really just depends, but that's when
because
you can
land,
get quotes.
people are like, oh, I can get so many acres for 50,000. That's cheap, blah blah blah. And they don't take into account there's costs that go along with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So just keep in mind, it's always good to get an estimate of cost before you go down that rabbit hole.
Yes.
So let's see. And speaking of costs, we won't get into the details of costs exactly, but there are fees that you pay the title company. A lot of times people break down, okay, I pay X amount of percent to the agent, I pay X amount in closing costs, I'm good to go. And they don't take into account what the fees are for the state. So what are some general fees that the state requires in Texas?
So the Texas guarantee fee, it is $2 per policy. And then, so our fees are mandated by the state of Texas. So recording fees, we charge for the recording fees for your warranty deed or your deed of trust, depending if you're doing cash or purchase.
And that's with the courthouse recording fees, right?
Yes, so it's the county recording fees. We'll check what county you're in. Most of the time, they're pretty standard, about the same, just depending what area you're in. And then
the attorney's fees too.
Attorney fees. So we do doc prep in the state of Texas. We're required to have the lenders, an attorney, review and prepare documents for us. I'm not sure about different states, but I know for Texas, we do require that. So document prep fees, attorney fees, and then obviously recording, the guarantee fee, and then depending on your loan amount or the purchase or the sales price, we have your premium. So that will change depending on the loan amount or the sales price of the house.
And that's for the title policy itself.
That's for the title policy itself and the premiums.
Yes. So, and you can look that up, and most title companies have like a calculator that you can kind of estimate that amount. So
we can do like fee sheets.
Yep.
Just to kind of give an idea of, what it might be.
What it looks like.
And it's always subject to change once you get in extra, endorsements, depending on the contract, if you're doing survey coverage or not.
Yep. So there's little things that can change. So a lot of times when we sit down with the seller and we give them an estimate of what their net is, we call it an estimate for a reason, because we haven't gone through all that final details. So just keep that in mind, that your net's going to fluctuate. And for buyers with their buying costs, they're going to fluctuate. They shouldn't fluctuate that much, but there will be some fluctuation. I know there's a lot of people who like to budget like me, where I want to the penny, and you're not going to get to the penny right away. You'll get it like a week before. So, but that's always good to know. So let's talk. Okay, so we've gone through, we got our title policy, everything's cleared. We're getting to closing. let's say we have an out-of-state person that's not going to be in town yet. What do they do? What happens with them?
So we have mobile notaries. With COVID, rules have been able to change a little bit. We can sign you through the window of your car.
Yay!
Just to keep glass between us. But we still do in-house closings. We do provide notaries. We use notary services that can go anywhere.
Right.
Most of them are national. So we'll just set them up if they're in Oklahoma, California. We have notaries that can just go to your home, sign. We just, depending if it's a purchase or a refinance, we just, schedule it accordingly. That way we can get documents back in time for funding.
Yes, because if you want to get your money or if you want to get your keys, you guys usually have to have the original documents back before you can do that normally.
Yes, so we also get scan backs. That way we can go ahead and fund.
Okay.
I personally, as an escrow officer, I highly recommend closing in the morning, especially if it's in a time change. That way, if you're in California, you're 2 hours behind us. So if we sign you at 11, then it's 1 o'clock our time. We just want to make sure everybody can get the keys and fund on time because a lot of you guys have movers scheduled and you're just ready to rock and roll.
Appliances coming in, internet getting hooked up. There's so many things that you're so excited about, and that's always a stopping block. And if you have, especially if you have a title company that doesn't communicate, or a lender that's inexperienced, or an agent that's inexperienced, we get to that closing timeline and everything just bottlenecks because if they're not talking to each other, nobody knows. Right. That's why I love working with you. I love working with Luke because all three of us are going, okay, we need X to happen, Y to happen, Z to happen.
Yes.
Who needs to do what, when, and where to make sure this works? And that's why it's great to always communicate with the people you're working with. If you say, look, I went to Lowe's and I got a fridge coming in and I got to be there in person or they won't deliver it. You got to tell your agent that so then I can communicate, yada, yada. So
there's a lot of moving parts, but just, who you're working with matters.
It does.
And, it's
especially
important.
at that point.
At that point, you just, there's just so many different moving parts. We all have to talk to separate people and it all comes together nicely in the end.
And I mentioned this, there's at least 26 people involved when you go through a real estate transaction. I feel like I'm running a circus. Like we're running a circus and we're making sure the show goes on.
2 phones.
We all just get going. So okay, let's talk about closing day. What does that look like? If I'm a buyer, how long should I expect to be sitting at the closing table?
It's really only about an hour. I have seen very large closing packages before.
Mine was 300 pages personally. I have VA loans. And 3 people have to get copied, and I think I signed my name 80 times. And I mean, I had a 3-inch stack of papers. My hand was sore.
I always allot an hour. I always say it's about an hour unless you have any questions or but I personally talk to clients in closing, we sign, we talk, sign, talk, just to break it up a little bit. It gets overwhelming. There's a lot of information. You're just kind of do I need to read all of this? What does this mean? What does this mean? So, it takes about an hour just to, not rush you through the process. Right. For sellers, it takes maybe 30 minutes. There's really not a whole lot of documents to sign.
Well, it depends on how many signers there are too.
And it depends how many signers there are. Yes. So
I've seen where parents have co-signed on a house and then they go to sell it, and then you have the 2 kids, and you can have 3 to 4 people sign the papers. It happens.
Yep. Some agents have to sign certain forms for specific lenders.
If you're signing as a power of attorney, your signature became 3 inches.
It's now 2 lines or 1 long one, depending how long the name is.
I had to do that once. My husband was deployed when we sold a house, and I had to sign it as a power of attorney.
Yes.
And I didn't know what the heck I was doing, and it was insane. Yes. And I had a really great lawyer, draft up my power of attorney, and we went and sold that darn house.
Yes.
What about sellers? How long do they normally sit at the table?
About 30 minutes. It's not super long.
Why is theirs shorter than a buyer?
Well, for one, they already signed their big pack when they
they already did your work.
House, but really, they just sign their closing disclosure and they sign our title documents.
Yep. They don't have all the lender documents.
They don't have all the lender documents, so it's very quick.
Yes. So if you have cash, you probably won't be there as long.
Right. Yeah. For cash for either side, it's
super quick.
Yeah, it's super quick.
Super quick and fun. So you've got multiple options on how you can close. You can close in person at the title office. You can close from another state. You can close in your own home. Yes. Some title companies will charge fees if you have to close in different locations. It just depends on a lot of things. So sometimes your agent might help out with that. I've done that with clients that weren't expecting a couple $100 expense. And so that was my closing gift to them to help out, because the last thing you need is that overwhelming push at the end and going, more.
Yeah.
So there's ways to make it all work for sure. Okay, so we close. Now, closing and funding are very different things. And I know you're not a lender, but there are horror stories where you close, it's too late in the day, and you don't get your keys right away. Because in the contract, it says when you sign and fund. So how do you avoid that? I know you touched on it a little bit already, but...
How we avoid it, really, I personally, and everybody's different, but I just try to sign buyers early as possible. With sellers, we'll just provide the seller's closing disclosure and the warranty deed to the lender, unless there's lender documents that the seller has to sign. So that's just, case by case.
Case by case, yep.
For the most part, I'm very strategic with it just because I want to make sure there's no hiccups. Just in case there are, I have time in the day to do it. Title companies, we have wire cutoff times, so making sure money is
each bank is different.
Each bank is different. Trying to get, if you're wiring funds, making sure you either wire before or right after the closing. That way it has time to hit our bank.
Which a lot of people kind of get weary of that. They're like, I don't know if I want to send you $20,000 the day before. What if it doesn't go through? Like they panic about that. You're not just going to keep the money if it doesn't go through.
Right, yeah.
So there's ways to move past that.
Yes, and cashier's checks too, over a certain amount, just know it does take, time for it to hit the bank with a cashier's check. We have to verify the cashier's check with that bank or whatever bank it came from. So there are a lot of moving parts. So it's best to sign. Obviously, schedules change. If a buyer has to sign in the afternoon, totally fine. We make it happen. We just have them sign, whatever documents are funding first. We can get those scanned away.
Going. I've seen it happen. It's like a working, like fluid thing that happens.
Yes. We've done it, and we've had plenty of incidences where it's like right at wire cutoff time and it funds, and we just go, and it's great, happy day.
That's right. So I believe Luke can fund at the table, which is such a great thing with what he does. So
some lenders can.
They can fund at the table. There's a couple different things that you can do. Me personally, when we start. When we execute a contract and you pick a closing date, I try so hard not to pick a Monday or Friday because there's just too much that has to happen because the lender has deadlines they have to meet too. And then holidays, like I've got one that's going to close on the 23rd of December. Like, it's right before Christmas. And you got to take into account, like we just had Thanksgiving. And so that took out a couple days out of some people's work time. So things weren't moving along because banks were closed. And so you have to be conscious of that when you're picking closing dates as well. So, and you can always adjust the closing date. It's on or before that date. So sometimes you can close early and you just sign a piece of paper to say we need to push it back a week. It doesn't mean the deal's falling apart. It's just getting it to finish the way it needs to finish. So I know I did write another note that I want to make sure I touch on. I want to talk about your communication. I think that's so huge because a lot of times you just don't hear, if there's no news, you don't hear anything. And you guys are really good at just saying, nothing's changed this week. We're still on track.
Yes.
Talk about your kind of communication style.
So it's important. And like I said earlier, there's a lot of moving parts. This is one of your largest investments you're going to make. So, and, tensions are high. You're trying to make sure, you're getting your appraisal done and you provided the survey and, payoffs and all of that. So we offer the information sheets right at the beginning, at your earliest convenience, important dates. We do critical dates letters, say, hey, this is what the contract states in bullet points because there's 10 pages to the contract plus some.
Some more.
Yes, just going in line of the critical dates letter, staying on track. I always like to provide a weekly update, even if nothing changed, like, hey, everything's great. I will talk to you next week. We're going to start getting ready to schedule your closing.
Because there's a lull. There's usually like around week 3, there is a lull where all the things have been checked off. You're not quite closed yet. There's a lull. So you guys are really good at saying, hey, everything's good. And we're just moving on and we just need more time because we're waiting on other parties to do what they need to do.
Definitely. And you just want to, it's peace of mind. Like, is everything okay? I haven't heard anything, So
nobody wants that.
Nobody wants that. Yeah. So we definitely do follow-ups. If we have any questions about anything, on our side, when we go to clear for sellers, what we ask for you to provide pretty much takes care of everything unless there is an outstanding lien for whatever reason.
Or something changes while you're in a transaction. Life happens. Things change.
Yes.
So tell me service area. Where do you guys work in?
So we can do all over the state of Texas. We did find out recently that we are actually expanding into Oklahoma.
Yay!
So, but anywhere in Texas. Right now our offices are in the DFW area. We have our corporate offices in Colleyville. We have one in Southlake. Bernie and I just opened our Plano office back in June. So, yes. So So we service all of this area up here. So we're all over though.
Love it. I love it. And what else do I need to ask you? What am I missing? Am I missing something? I feel like we've covered a lot. Like that was a lot.
I do get asked, what Juniper Title is. So we get asked, I haven't heard of you guys before.
Yeah,
like how long have you been around?
Yes.
Yes. So we have the big dogs are out there. There's lots of title companies in the area. But Juniper Title's been around for a little over 10 years now. It's owned by our attorney, Julia Barth. She's a real estate attorney. Fantastic. I absolutely love her. She's been, trying to recruit Brittany and I for 2 years now. Like right when I started really, but it's just we're a boutique title company. That's what we like to, we pride ourselves in being a smaller company. We offer, more intimate services. We are still underwritten by the big dogs. That's what I always say. But, we're very relational with our clients. You matter to us. This is your largest investment. We want to make sure you understand why title insurance is important, why you need it, why we ask you, certain questions to, get things cleared off. So, just the juniper, juniper stands for the juniper tree, and that it has just such a deep meaning to it, and we love that about our title company. So.
Love it, love it, love it, love it. Okay, I think that's everything. We went through so much information on here. This is definitely going to be a resource for you to go back, because maybe you're not even thinking about getting into a transaction right now, but later on it might be, okay, now I'm in, what do I do? What the heck is title?
Yes.
And I want you to meet Ashley. I'm going to call you Brittany.
We look alike.
Oh my gosh. I'm going to meet Ashley and just know who you are, because sometimes people don't even talk to you. Most of everything's through email, and then on the last day they meet you. And I hate that. I wish they met you up front a lot of the times. And so a lot of times clients don't get to do that. So that's why I wanted this video, so I could introduce Ashley to you, because then when you get to the closing table, you already felt like you've met her already.
Yes. And we give our cell phones out. That way, if anybody has any questions, weekends, whatever.
I can reach you at any time. That's a big thing with a lot of my vendors. If I'm going to have a local person, I want someone I can get to all the time, because real estate doesn't sleep at all. It's always going and always moving, and things happen.
Ask questions. Like I said, there's a lot of moving parts and different people that you talk to. If you're just unsure about something, you have your agent to talk to. I mean, they're your mentor. They're helping you through this process. So
we do this every day.
Yes.
You might do this every 5 to 10 years. We do this every day.
Yes.
For sure.
And we still ask questions. There's lots that change. Rules change yearly. COVID, there was a lot of, we had to pivot a little bit and figure out new ways to sign you guys and things like that. So lots of moving parts, but communication's open. Just trust your partners, your vendors who you work with. That's the main thing.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for watching. I hope this was super helpful for you, and I can't wait to see you on the next episode.
Thanks,
Talk to y'all
guys.
soon.